Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Ben Backus.
And I'm Kevin Paulin, and welcome to the Falling Up Podcast, where we have conversations about turning obstacles into opportunities. And on today's show, we have the pleasure of being joined by Miss Stephanie Demuis.
Stephanie is a recovery support specialist who works with individuals struggling with a plethora of substance use disorders. On today's episode, Stephanie not only shares her experience working with individuals and helping them overcome addiction, but also shares her own personal experience struggling with mental health, trauma, and substance abuse.
So without further ado, welcome to the Falling Up Podcast.
Listen, when I first met him, we worked together, and he used to have such a good vibe that the office would be in a bad place, and then Kevin would walk through and everybody's mood would change because it's hard to be negative when somebody's so fucking positive.
That's right.
So we had this good vibe.
For sure.
He's just good people. So when somebody asks you to do something like that and we go back, it's hard to say no.
Yeah.
And today, even when I'm tired, I show up.
That's what it's all about.
I appreciate you.
It's about
we appreciate you.
Staying committed and following through with the commitment. And when you say you're going to do something, today I show up.
And that is, by definition, the opposite of addiction, right? Where addiction is so chaotic, it is, we go in whatever direction the wind blows. And to have the principles of saying, hey, I really value commitments. I value sticking to my word and doing the things that I sign up for. That I would imagine that is something that has taken time to develop and evolve to. So can you give us just a little bit of a background of, I know you're a recovery support specialist.
Yep. What do you mean? A background of my work history, or a background of life?
Yeah, and that, you know what? Let's start with the work history. Hearing the term recovery support specialist, I have some insight into it, but can you kind of define to everyone listening what that entails?
So, if you ever told me that one day I was gonna get paid good money to have a mental illness and a substance abuse problem, good money for that, they designed a job for me. I was like, what? So it's a person with lived experience in both mental health and addiction. So when you say my story is mostly about addiction, so I believe that if you don't address your mental health, that's where it comes from in the beginning. You're using something to cover up your mental illness. And I didn't even know I had one until it came to stop using to look at the serious events that come into place to see that I had a mental illness that I tried to cover up for so long because it was misdiagnosed or not diagnosed ever. And being able to look at that, if I didn't get that under control, I was going to stay using until I probably died. But so when I was younger, I didn't grow up in a privileged household. So I believe that I was born to this disease by my mom and my dad were both addicts. And I grew up in a lifestyle where it was okay so my older sister is 10 years older than me. So my dad would leave us with her to babysit us. So when we thought we were the cool kids, we had the fake cigarettes, and she would fill up wine cooler bottles with water, and we would sit around with her cool friends, and it was socially acceptable to be like that. I thought I was a cool kid. And my dad would bring us to the Elks Club, and we would be playing in the back of that while he got drunk inside, and it was okay. I thought that everybody's life was like that. I thought that was common. But I quickly learned that we learn those things as children, that this pattern of behaviors that we learn as kids, it's really hard to unlearn what we learn as kids.
Yeah, it's so funny to think that as humans, we're essentially 90% of us is just programmed from the people in our immediate life. So if you really think about it, we can go back probably, 100 plus years and be wow, there's 3 people who contributed to who we are today.
Yeah.
And that becomes scary because there's 7 billion people in the world. And to think how easy it is to just believe that, hey, just this a direct lineage is who we are until we get reprogrammed. And what it takes to get reprogrammed is so much. And that's part of what I'm very excited to talk to you about today, is how you were able to not only overcome your addiction, but help others through your work.
You know, Aristotle once said, give me a child until they're 7 and I'll show you a man.
Yeah. And it is so, it's incredibly spot on.
Yeah, that first 7 years is everything. You know what I mean? That's pretty much your roadmap getting set. You know?
Yeah, you develop like, hey, the norm, seeing dad drink, being around, the appeal to use drugs sounds like it was there at a really young age. And that was certainly, for whatever reason in my life, I had very, what I would consider, just for lack of better terms and simplicity, like a stable family where my parents were good role models. Yet in middle school, I was so attracted to the individuals who were using drugs or, trying to get the girls and all of that. Like that, there's such a strong suction towards that.
To being the cool kid? Hell yeah. Everybody want to be the cool kid.
So like my mom was addicted to anything and everything, but mostly men. So she was going from one man to the next man to the next man, and until like she met the last one that she was with. So my dad was a Vietnam vet. He came home from the war and like had kids like right off the rip. So when my mom took me and my sister back after leaving my dad for like another man, he started smoking crack cocaine. So in and out of my life since I was a little kid, come here for like a few months and like just disappear, and then back and disappear. And my mom like went from whoever could take care of her kids. Like she literally would do whatever it took to take care of it. And I understand that now. But like back in the day, like we were always second. Like we were always, in my mind, I looked at it like we were always going to be second best. But in reality, she would do whatever it took to take care of us because she couldn't. And so she went from one man to the next man. And by the age 15, like I had like 3 different stepdads, and they were all mentally, physically, and sexually, well, not sexually abusive, but the last one was, but mentally and physically for sure. And so my last stepdad at the age 15, he was probably the worst one that she had ever been with. He would physically abuse her to the point where she would have black and blues all over. They would be so drunk, like my mom would like, I remember one night we're sitting in our room and I hear a shotgun go off and she blew a hole in the ceiling trying to get him away from her. And he would like sexually do things with her in the doorway so that we could like watch. And he used to sneak into my bedroom in the middle of the night and try to like do, like I would be awake but act like I was sleeping, so like move to the other side of the room. And I remember coming to my mom one night and I was like, listen, like this man is trying to do stuff with me. And she didn't believe me. She was like, he would never do that. And so I let him get to the point where my pants were down at my ankles, and I called her in my room. I was like, do you believe me now? Do you believe me now? And he was like, I thought it was you, like whatever, making so many excuses up. And I came to her and I was like, listen, DCF has come into my school multiple times and I've never wanted to be taken away from you or be separated from my younger sister. But this time, if you don't do something about it, like I'm going to tell the truth. Like I'm done.
How old were you at this time?
15.
That's pretty incredible that you were able to advocate for yourself through all of those experiences at that young of an age.
But this is also like physical abuse of me and my younger sister, like physically, like coming to I remember him coming to my school, and my sister did something stupid, and he like pulled her down the hallway by her hair, and like nobody did anything about it. Like, you know what I mean? So I was sick of watching both of us have to go through this. And finally I was like, I'm done. And I came home from school that day, and they were carrying out bags and bags of marijuana plants from our backyard. So he had a factory of marijuana growing in our backyard. And my mom called the police and like had them take them out, He goes to jail for like 6 months. And during that time, my mom met another man. So now she has a boyfriend. And so when he went to jail, he like told on everybody. Like he brought everybody in town down with him. So he only served 6 months. And so December 16th, 1996, I remember it being, so I grew up in northern Michigan where it snowed to your head. Like, it was normal for it to be like snowing crazy. And my mom's boyfriend used to raise husky puppies. And we'd have like 8 of them growing, running around our yard at all times. So I remember like I didn't feel good, and neither did her boyfriend. And I was laying on the floor, and finally my mom was like, just go to bed. And me and my sister shared a room, and we had bunk beds. And she was like on her bed filling out invitations because her birthday was December 30th. So she was like filling out birthday invitations to a birthday party, and she had to have my mom sign them. So like we're both in there, I'm sick, and I hear her knocking at the door, and I'm like, Mom, I think that somebody's knocking. And she's like, no, it's probably just the puppies, like go to bed. And I'm laying there again, bam, bam, bam. And I'm like, Mom, no, there's definitely somebody knocking on the door. So her boyfriend gets up and like so you have to open the first door in order to get through the second door. So he opened the first door, and he must have realized that it was my stepdad. And so he comes up to the second door and holds it shut. My stepdad came to my house with a 12-gauge shotgun, and he blew a hole through the door and shot her boyfriend. And I remember looking down the hallway and seeing him laying there and blood all over the place. And me and my sister, like, looking down the hall. And we didn't really know what was going on at that time. Like, so we thought that, maybe my mom went outside with the shotgun, like, it went off. Like, we didn't know. Like, we didn't see him because he was still behind the door. And she's screaming, like, somebody go get help. Stephanie, go get help. Like, and I'm 15 years old. I'm, like, so confused and lost. So all of our shoes were in the living room. So I just ran out the back door. I sat my sister down in the corner. I was like, whatever happens, like, just stay here. I'm coming back for you. And so I ran to the first neighbor's house, and our first neighbor's house is like a mile away. Like, it's not like we lived on a dirt road. So the first neighbor, there was no one home. I was like, oh my God. Like, so I run to my second neighbor's house, and I tell them, like, somebody shot, and they know him, so I'm like, somebody shot Jeff. Like, I don't know what's going on, but like, you need to call 911. And they were having a party, and they were laughing at me. And I was like, I remember screaming off the top of my lungs, like, somebody needs to go get help. And so they finally do call 911. And at that point, my sister comes running in, and she didn't run out of, I ran out of the house with no shoes on. My little sister goes in the living room to go get her shoes, and she's face to face with a shotgun and my stepdad. And he told her, she was like, are you going to kill me too? And my mom's screaming and yelling, and he said, no, just get out of here. So she goes like running in, and she's telling everybody, like, Jack is in the house, and, he has a gun. And so by the time the police come there, my neighbors are looking down, looking over at my house, and they told me, like, that they see my mom walk out. So we're like sitting there, like, in relief, thinking that my mom is alive. And I remember me and my sister sitting on like a reclining chair together, and the cops coming in and telling us that our mom was dead. And so I remember kicking the cop in the face and like telling him he was a liar. And like my whole world came crumbling down. Like everything that I knew of my life was like just in the flash over. We had nowhere to go. My whole family, my dad's side of the family lived here in Connecticut. So like we're out in Michigan all by ourselves. Like we had no idea what was going on. So from that moment, like that's where my life changed. That in the flash of a light, like I didn't realize that I suffered with PTSD from that situation for many, many years. Like nightmares and night terrors and just the trauma that we faced before that situation with the abuse from all those different people. It came like I literally, like I used drugs trying to, so it went from like one drug to the next drug to the next drug. But when I came to Connecticut, like it didn't just end that way. So when I came here, like I graduated from high school. I was coming here, I hung out with all these bad kids. And I knew that if I didn't go to like a night school, I would never graduate with my class. and I was determined to graduate in the year 2000. Like, I would do anything it took. So I went to night school, and I was actually like the guest speaker at my graduation. They like elected me. Like, all the teachers put a name into a hat, and I was the only one in there. And they were like, it's unanimous. Like, you have to do this. And I'm like, oh my God. But like being able to get up and like get my diploma with my class. And I remember when I did that speech, I had worked in the restaurant that I work at right now back then. And I worked there for like 11 years. So I started when I was like 17 years old, and I worked there for 11 years. And, but then I worked for an accountant at that same time. And at that point, like, I drank alcohol like normal kids. Like, I would smoke weed, like, you know what I mean? Like, it was never a problem. And so I remember working at the accountant's office. This little girl walked in, and she gave me these little blue pills. And I was like, I didn't know what they were, but I was working 2 jobs. I had all this money in the bank, bought my own cars, paid for my own insurance. Like, my dad told me at 16 years old, if you want anything more than food, you better go get a job. And from that moment, like, I had a job. I worked multiple jobs. It felt good to be able to take my friends to all these clubs and pay for everything, like the hotel, everything. And that little blue pill changed my life. She came in, and they were Perk 30s. I remember that was the first time in my life. Like, I had done so many of them, not realizing it. And I wake up one day and I don't have any, and I'm not thinking anything of it. I'm like, whatever. I was shaking. I couldn't get up. Like, I was throwing up. I called the girl, and I'm like, what is going on with me? And she's like, you're addicted. And like, from that moment, like, that was the first time I ever heard that. So I remember having to do payday loans to like get money in the bank so I could buy some more. Like, the insanity of what I would do to get more. Like, I was in the bathroom at the restaurant that I work at right now. Like, I put that man at the end of my time there. I put him through hell. Like, he held me up against a wall. Like, what is wrong with you? He knew me so well. Like, I was dedicated. I was loyal. I showed up. I worked hard. All of a sudden, I was not doing that. Like, I was not being the same person, and he knew it. So I remember coming to him, telling him I need to go get help. They both the accountant and the restaurant, they were like, go, like, we support you. Like, just come back when you're ready. So I come back, I couldn't stop. Like, I could not fucking stop. Like, it was like, I could not. And it quickly escalated to the point where, like I couldn't go back to either one of those jobs. So I remember my younger sister was working in a strip club, and that's where I ended up. Like, I ended up doing that. Like, and it was glamorous at first until I started smoking crack cocaine, and like, it went from one drug to the next drug to whatever, just so I didn't have to feel. But when I started smoking crack, like, I didn't have to feel anymore. Like, that was like the love of my life. Like, I ran the streets of New Haven. Like, I drive through the streets of New Haven right now, and it still triggers me to the things, the means and ways to get more. Like, I would do anything and everything just to get another one. By the time I went to like my 4th detox, I remember going in there 90 pounds soaking wet. And I was like, if you do not send me far away from here, I'm going to die. And so they sent me out to New London. And that's where, like, I was introduced to Narcotics Anonymous. I went to all these meetings, like, but then I realized, like, I started doing the same thing. The patterns and behaviors that I've learned as a kid, like, I started doing myself. So it was like from one man to the next man to the next man, like, so that I was never alone. So when I went to New London, I was so in love with smoking crack that, like, that was the love of my life, right? So I had an empty hole inside, right? So I meet this guy who's now my daughter's father, but like 90 days clean, they tell me I'm going to have a baby. And I'm like, a baby? Like, I've never even heard that. Like, I went through all these things, like, and never heard you're pregnant. You know, that was the one thing in my life. But that's the love of my life now. Like, this little girl has, like, filled the void. From when I lost my mom, I had this hole inside my heart that I tried to fill with so many things. Working, money, men, you know, drugs, anything and everything to not feel that pain. And, like, I believe that, like, everything happens for a reason. And even though it didn't work out with him, you know what I mean? Like, I still got the best gift of all.
Yeah, I say it a million times on this podcast, and people are probably sick of hearing me say it, but I do think it is a quote that rings so incredibly true. Dr. Jordan Peterson says, addiction is a substitute for not having anything meaningful to wake up for. You have purpose today, right? That gave you that purpose. And when you say that fills the hole, right? In so many ways, it does. And that's truly beautiful to hear. I love having people on the podcast who are part of self-help groups because they're so incredibly articulate and concise in the way they share their story. So I can tell you've done this a few times.
Yeah, I really
have. If you're comfortable, I want to just take a little step back because I have so many questions. I mean,
just go because like life is from that to this, like, you know, you have to kind of give them people a background of like, this is where I came from, this is how I got there, and this is what I'm doing differently. Right.
Yeah, and just to break some of those down, because I again, your story is so incredibly powerful. The resiliency and the resolve that you have to be sitting here today, and courage to be able to give that back. I'd love to be able to break a few things down. And the first thing I want to do, I'm going to take like 50 steps back. If you were to define what addiction is, how would you define it?
So it's like wanting to die, but like not wanting to die. Like for me, that's what it was like. Like I hated how I felt so much, and like I just wanted to like not feel that way anymore. But like I said, I believe that like if I was treated for PTSD when the situation happened from the rip, but my family, like, they didn't really understand or, you know, understand how to help us because we put them through hell. Like, if I can sit here and tell you, my older sister gave up her whole life to try to help us. I tortured her. I hated her because I wanted her to be my sister and not my mom. And I remember yelling and screaming at her, telling her, like, you're not my fucking mom. Like, my dad the same way. Like, you were never there for us, so I'm going to torture you now. You know, when my mom died, he had a year clean under his belt, but didn't want to tell us because he was afraid that he wasn't going to stay. And now he has like 27 years clean. But if I realized what I did to him back then could have put him in a predicament where he was going to end up using too, I didn't realize that like that at the moment. You know, like I didn't know that. Yeah,
well, there's always this underlying selfish tone to addiction, right? To be able to justify behaviors that are so many times unjustifiable, right? There has to be that us at the core of it, right? Like the world revolves around us, solely us. Yeah. So I know you mentioned getting the little blue boy and all of a sudden not being able to, not having it and being dope sick for the first time. When was the moment that you really realized that I have a problem? And I'm not talking intellectually, right? Because I think there's one thing to be able to intellectually understand, hey, I have a problem, but to actually be able to emotionally truly be like, hey, I have a problem and I'm ready and willing to address this.
Multiple times that I went to detox or rehab, I only did it so that my dad would let me go home. Like, I only did it so that maybe they wouldn't hate me. Like, maybe they would stop asking me questions and, like, I could continue to do what I want to do, but they'll just leave me alone and think I'm okay. Like, so the last time I went to detox, I knew at that point, like, I tried to control it. So I used to think, like, oh, I could drink on the weekends. Oh, I can, like, do this. Like, it always led back to the next. Like, it always led back to where I was, you know? So I remember being in that spot that last time. It was rock bottom. Like, it was rock bottom. I had not $1 in my pocket. I had these pick marks all over my face. Like, I knew looking in the mirror that I didn't like me. And I remember that, like, I had a good life. You know what I mean? Like, I worked hard. Like, how did I get here? It was like rock bottom for me. I had no car, no job. I went to medical assisting school. I couldn't even finish that. Like, it was like, I remember feeling like emotionally detached from like even me. Like I didn't even know who I was anymore.
So it was really becoming aware of how far I drifted from my principles, my morals, who I am.
Yes.
And that awareness was brought on from that kind of gift of desperation from being at this really, really low spot.
Sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Exactly.
So, and I don't know if this is possible because I do believe as humans, unfortunately, it takes that pain in that getting beaten down to be willing to try something new, or at least I'll speak for myself in my life. Like if I want to do something, I'm going to do everything in my power to do it until the pain is great enough of me trying to force my will on something that I'm willing to seek an alternative method of accomplishing it. With that said, is there any advice that you could give to someone who maybe intellectually knows that they have a problem, but isn't emotionally there to help raise that awareness and say, hey, there's another way to live, or there's something that can be done to help that process along?
I think that like a lot of times, so I work today at Connecticut Mental Health. And so I'm dealing with people with the same problems. You know, they have a mental illness. They don't want to take their they're using drugs. So a lot of times, like, I speak to them, like, I let them talk, right? Oh, I justified this, like, this one did that. And I'm like, listen, it sounds to me like there's a core solution, like, you're the problem. Like, I call them out on it, you know, like, I kind of, like, let them talk, and I'm like, you're justifying, like, but it was somebody calling me out, like, somebody, like, being stern with me. Like, I remember going to this house in New London. It was, like, so Stonington Institute has, like, these little houses all over. So I remember having this house manager. She was, like, this strong, independent African American, like, she was crazy as shit. And, like, I'm out here thinking, like, I know everything, right? So I remember being in a room with this girl, and she tried to, like, beat me up in the hallway. And my house manager was like, listen, like, you probably fucking deserved it. Like, she was so stern with me, but, like, I'm the same way with my clients. Like, I have to kind of, like, be honest. Like, I don't know. It's the honesty with them. Like, I tell them how I got here and, like, the different cool things I get to do in life today. But, like, having somebody share their experience with me, or, like, calling me out. I remember going to church. We were going to church, right? I'm all dressed, like, cute. I thought I looked nice. And she's like, go change. I was like, what? She's like, you're not wearing that. And I'm like, what's wrong with this? And she was like, go cover up. And, like, somebody had to, like, call me out on my shit, you know? So it's that for me with my people. Like, I do the same with them.
I think when you got lived experience in education, right?
Yeah.
So with education, you can explain why this shit happens. With lived experience, you get a button, and it's called the bullshit button. You know what I'm saying? You get to press that button and look them straight in the eyes and say, bullshit. You know what I'm saying? And that's the beautiful thing of lived experience, when we could turn it into that positive for the next person, is that, like, I could call you out.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you could, well, I mean, there is something you can do about it, not listen to me, but at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? Especially recovery. When you talk to somebody, like when I was at Recovery House, the main thing, if a case manager from any detox place comes and they don't have lived experience, that's the first thing they can play. I'm not listening to them. They don't even know what I'm going through. They don't know. That's the number one thing. You know what I'm saying? So, and I feel like it's an excuse, you know what I'm saying, to not listen. But when you got the person that's, I know what you're talking about, what's up? And I could press that bullshit button, you know what I'm saying? That puts them in the position of, okay, which way I'm going this fork in the road? I'm going to keep bullshitting and knowing someone's seeing me bullshit, or am I going to, lean to the right or whatever way that is and start making it happen?
And with addiction, it's such a unique, just human deficit, right? Where if I go to a doctor and they say, hey, you have diabetes, I'm not going to be like, no, I don't, right? I'm going to take it at face value, and I'm going to say, okay, what can I do to work with this? Whereas
what you mean I got diabetes?
Right, exactly, right? Whereas if I go to a professional and they say you have an addiction, or if I go to a parent or a friend and they say you have an addiction, the likelihood of me being like, fuck you, no, I don't. What are you talking about, right?
Yeah.
And what it says is it's essentially the only self-diagnosed disease, disorder, whatever people are comfortable calling it, in the world. And until the person acknowledges that, wait a minute, taking on that personal responsibility and saying, this isn't the life I want to live, not a whole lot is really going to be done in that change process. Now, you can start the change process without acknowledging it. I think that is a myth, right? Like, I think to say you have to be completely beaten down to make that real change. I've seen plenty of individuals not get totally beaten down, be totally reluctant to anything, but they go to a really good program, they develop really great networks, and all of a sudden they start having fun, and then they're able to make that informed decision. Hey, I can go back to the way I was living before, or I can continue down this path and make change. I've seen that many times. But it is unique in that we have to own our struggle to actually be able to move forward. And it sounds like the people in that program who were really blunt and straightforward with you helped you in some way take a real look in that mirror.
Like I said, I lost who I was. So like having somebody be able to tell me that like my outfit isn't appropriate, I didn't even know that. Like I didn't even know who Stephanie was anymore. Like I was just the addiction or the mental illness. Like I was that. Like I didn't have an identity. But being 90 days clean and having a baby, like I quickly lost my identity again. Like I was mom. Like I didn't get to like be Stephanie. I didn't get to like find out what does Stephanie like to do? I don't know. Like if somebody asked me that question, I'd be like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, what do I like to do? Because I like to get high. Like I like to like do that. That's what I like to do. But like, if you ask me like, do you like bowling? Do you like roller skate? Do you like these things? I wouldn't even know because I hadn't done it in so long. So I started off in that, like, but I've learned now with being in recovery for so long that there's so many other pathways. Like you don't necessarily, like I learned a lot from there, but like I learned that like there's other ways to recover too. Like you don't have to be like uniformed. Like if you don't do this, you're going to die. And I'm like, but I'm not going to die if I don't like do these things. I guess I was kind of, I've always been that way. Like I want to like figure out my own way. Cause like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't believe that if you don't write these steps and you don't have like if you don't have all these things, you're going to die. I don't like that. Like, well,
it's just not true.
I don't like that. Yeah.
And it's the same. The hardest thing is it follows these same really rigid principles of something like the DARE program back in the 80s, where it's like, just say no, don't do drugs are bad. Well, the reality is the second I have that experience, now everything is bullshit, and I've just totally cut off this source that I'm never going to listen to again because they're not giving me proper information. And I think the same can be true with anything. Anytime you say you have to do this or there's absolutes, you open up, because let's face it, we're all wildly different, right? So to say that not one person cannot do these things and still live a good life, like that is wildly inaccurate. How I look at self-help groups is I do think that when you break down the principles that they provide, well, they provide community, they provide connection, they provide spirituality, they provide a beautiful outline to live one's life by. It's kind of like if I'm going to throw this party and I'm going to throw a massive party and I have to go to, Stop and Shop, then Big Y, then the seafood market, and I have to go and get the balloons and the candy and the cake, right? What's the likelihood of me getting really overwhelmed and say, fuck it, I'm just going to get it catered, right? Versus if I could go to one place and get all of these things in one place, well, now I'm likely to follow through and throw the party I really want to throw. And that's kind of how I look at self-help, is it's all in one shopping, so it makes it easier. It doesn't mean that you can't seek out all of the principles it provides in alternative places. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It really does.
So it certainly is simplistic, and especially in the beginning, like it's the path of least resistance, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be the only way, and I think that message can really turn people off.
Yeah. So like I kind of learned in that, like I had so much of my time dedicated to like doing these things, like 5 meetings a week, and I'm like, this is insane. Like, it's 9:00 at night. My daughter has school. Like, why am I out at 9:00 at night when I got a kid that got to go to school at like 7:00 in the morning. Like, I'm like looking at my life going, this is insane. Like, I'm doing the same thing that when I was using, like, my insanity of like thinking was reformed because, like, yeah, it works. It works if you work it, whatever. If that's the terminology. But like, it also starts to give you like insanity. So like, there's a lot of gossip and there's like, who's doing who. Like, I'm 40 years old. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah. And that's where
point.
I think anytime you get a group of people together, especially a group of individuals who have been in really, really, really difficult situations, right? It's like anything in life. When you have a social group that consists of multi-million people, you're going to get the individuals who are really high functioning. You're going to get the individuals who are incredibly low functioning, and everywhere in between. And that's where I think where they say, like, take what you want, leave the rest, follow the people who you want, what you have, all those things I think do ring true. But what you mentioned too is it can certainly be used as a form of addiction, right? Meaning, I look at addiction very simply, where, hey, you have this obsession, this compulsion, and you spend an excessive amount of time thinking about, or recovering from a certain thing. And as a result, you neglect other areas of your life, and you have a keyword, negative consequences, right? So if I'm going to AA 50 hours a week, right, which would be a little excessive, obviously, but I'm going to exaggerate a little bit if everything I do is revolving around connection, things like that. Well, I'm either not going to be able to build other areas of my life, or I'm going to neglect other areas of my life similar to as using drugs, and I'm going to have these negative consequences because there's only 168 hours in the week. The average human sleeps, 49, 50 hours. So it leaves about 120 hours. If a huge portion of that is at work and AA, well, now I'm probably not going to develop my home life or recreational needs, whatever it may be. So I think with so many things, like, balance is so very, very important. And don't get me, like, the principles are important too, because I had a similar experience where, I was around self-help groups for many, many years. I no longer am, but where I made a grave mistake is recognizing the role it played in my life, right? So when I stopped going, I didn't replace it with anything. And even without active addiction in my life, I blew my life up, and I got so far away from the person I wanted to be. I got so far away from my morning routines and my visualization and my gratitude. And as a result, I was still able to maintain all my obligations, but I was fucking miserable, right? So recognizing that, hey, if I'm doing something and it works, I need to maintain that. Even if I don't get it from the same source, I need to mimic it in another area of my life.
So being in there, like, and I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, my life is perfect, because it's not. And like, life gets hard. Like, life is overwhelming. I remember relapsing the first time and almost losing my daughter. And at that point, like, your addiction can come back. It's like, you're worthless. You're a piece of shit. You're a bad mom. Like, you're a scumbag. She's better off without you. Like, the voices in your head become so loud that I found myself in the spiral downplay, and me and her father both ended up using together. So we're like together. It only took 5 days of being together to be like, dude, I got to get out of here. And, so I went into a mothers and children's program, ended up working my way back in, regained custody of my daughter. And later on, like, life got good. Like, I started working. So my older sister's always been a big supporter, whether she wanted to or not. Like, she's a tough cookie, and like, she's never been addicted to anything, but she's been addicted because of our addictions. So she first got my dad's addiction, then her sister's addictions, and had to go through all these things. So she gets sick and tired. She's like, I'm not doing this with you anymore. Like, you either get it together or like, leave me alone. But she has 2 kids too. And like, I've always been a part of their life throughout the whole thing. They've seen it all. And so she's like, I'm not going to lie to my kids anymore. Like, you're not going to be around them. And that hurts. Like, I love my nieces and nephews, just like you said to you, like with yours, like my nieces and, my nephews, they're an important part of my life. And I value that more than anything, is being able to show up, buy them gifts, like not stolen from somebody. You know what I mean? Like, I want to have like that And now they buy me, like, they're old enough to, like, buy me a gift. When they came into Christmas this year, and, like, even their small, like, little things, like, it just meant so much to me. Like, that it's just them thinking about me, you know what I mean? Like, it was a simple gift, but it just, like, it means a lot.
Yeah, it does. I bet it does.
We got for everyone who doesn't know what's going on, Kev's nephew is sitting right next to him right now, and when he heard that that you got a gift from your nephew, he gave him a nice hard look right there. A nice hard look.
Eventually they come to that place where, listen.
They don't give me shit.
Listen, but they mean a lot to me. So I realized that I was putting so much attention into a different area. So if these are my patterns of behaviors that I learned growing up. So I found them there. Like so when I relapsed the last time, I was like, my patterns of behavior happen here. Like, I need to stop participating. So if you got like this criminal background and you like are on probation, if your work history's spotty, like, I'm attracted to you. Like, I like you. I met like the worst men that have been more mentally or physically abusive to me in the room. It's like, oh my God. And I don't say that I can't find them anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, I can't say that but it's the only place I was going. So like,
yeah. And I think there's two things I want to point out there, because I have had similar encounters where, hey, I've met some of the just individuals I would never want to associate with in rooms. In the same breath, I've truly met the most wonderful people and people that I look up to and I admire, and are these like truly the epitome of what I want to be and what I strive to be. So I think anytime you're dealing with millions of people, you're going to get both ends of the spectrum. But going back to the idea of like who we're attracted to, I think that comes down again to survival, right? Like there is comfort in the discomfort, or familiarity. Yeah. We're attracted to things that are familiar, that we have the reference points, because again, whether we know it or not, we like to create predictability. Although addiction is the kind of antithesis of that, right? We still like predictable. So if I know, hey, this is this person and their qualities, I know how to deal with them, I've been around them, it's a lot easier to go towards them versus the idea of someone else, right? Because before I actually engage in a behavior or in a relationship with someone who is not kind of expressing or displaying those qualities, all I have is the idea of what that's going to be like. And so many times our brain will lie to us because this is safe, this is comfortable, this is familiar. Don't do that. That would be too scary. That would be too vulnerable. And until we're able to do it and have a real reference point to compare, then it becomes a choice, right? And it sounds like you have way more choice in your life today than at one point.
Well, I didn't realize that, like, I had a pattern, but I dated the same man with a different face my entire life.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm looking at this guys and I'm like, I've been through this, like, but it's the same patterns and behaviors that I learned as a child. Watching my mom go through what she went through with all these different guys, like, I learned that that's how you're supposed to be treated. And so today, I have this little girl that wants to be just like me. And like, if you ever told me back then that some kid would want to be like me, I'd be like, you're fucking crazy. But now I have to like learn a different way, because I'm going to teach this little girl how a woman's supposed to be treated and valued and respected. And like, now I'm not doing that because like I'm doing the same thing to her. Like, I'm bringing all these different men around my daughter and like thinking that's okay, you know, and not even looking at it, but her dad calling me out on it. And like, I need to hear that from him. Like, you're teaching her how to be treated. Even if I'm learning, like I had the same thing with you. You know what I mean? Like, I learned how I was supposed to be treated by like, I'm not learning a different way by the way you treated me. But like, now I have to learn a different way so that I could teach her different. Like, I can't teach her different if I'm doing the same thing. Right. So for the last year, 2 years, I've been alone. Like, I work 2 jobs, full-time jobs, almost 2 full-time jobs. Like, I just want to be able to. So last year, I took her on 2 different little vacations for like 5 days, because like that's what my bank account says I can afford. But like, be able to get on an airplane with her and like pay for the whole thing and like not have some dude pay for it. Like, today I have a car outside. Like, I pay for that. I have an apartment. I don't have like, so I have a life today that I don't want to run from. You know, I don't have everything, but I'm so appreciative to what I have. You know, like I look around and I'm like, I have a room, like her own room, like all this stuff, like, but I worked hard for that. You know, like I worked hard to provide that little room. The car outside. Like I have a job listen, when I first got the job at the Columbus House, right? Like they asked me if I wanted a 401k plan. I was like, what the fuck is that? I had to Google it, and I'm like, I don't know. And like, what kind of insurance do you want? And so not a government issued health insurance. So those are things that to me, like my life is different than my mom's. You know, like I know that my mom was like, so we had like a really awful growing up, but like I realized in the long run, and I hated her for that. I was so angry when she first died that she chose that over us. But like she chose us, and that's why she chose that. And I realized that she did the best she could with what she was given, you know? And today I realized that. Like I realized that she would have did anything for us, even if that meant laying down with some man that abused her. She would have did that to take care of us.
Well, you got that. Now you have the reference point of being a mother.
Yeah.
So now you see it from a whole different.
Yeah.
You know
So
what I'm saying?
I want my daughter to like look back. So I've already outlived my mom. She died at 36. Like I'm 40 years old. So like I look at that like you're winning. Like you're not gonna put yourself in that situation to where you're gonna have my little girl to look back and be like, if you don't stop doing this, this is what happens to your children. And so I've reached out to like different domestic violence shelters and like different places like that because I don't want to speak on like domestic violence directly, but what happens to your kids if you don't stop it and you die, look at what happens to your children. Because like I didn't know, I was 15 years old. That's when you need your mom the most.
Right.
Like I have questions, like I need some answers. My dad doesn't know, you know, he worked second shift. Like we were alone all the time. Like I needed my mom.
Yeah.
When those men were abusing me, like I needed to ask her some questions. Like I had some things I need to know, but like I was running from that.
Yeah.
And so angry at her.
And today, you're not running. And today, what you described and all of that is, hey, I have self-worth. And it didn't come out of nowhere, right? It's the cliche saying, you want self-esteem, do esteemable things. Hey, I don't need to rely on other people. I can do these things for myself. And as a result, that is where that self-esteem, that self-confidence, and most importantly, that self-worth comes from. And it's truly what I love most about doing this is like, those are the things that inspire me, is hearing someone come from such an incredible disadvantage based on the events that were completely out. You didn't seek any of, I mean, as your addiction progressed, I'm sure you contributed, right? But for so much of it, we don't get to choose where we're born. We don't get to choose who we're born to. So to be placed at that disadvantage and be able to overcome is remarkable. And to hear that the journey's still going on. Hey, just a couple years ago is when I made this huge realization that I can have self-worth. I can truly break the cycle of addiction, right? And breaking the cycle of addiction is a hell of a lot more than not getting high, right? It's changing all of the behaviors that are associated with instant gratification, right? With the path of least resistance. And that's fucking amazing.
It's not even like breaking the addiction. I want to break the pattern of what happens to your children when you keep doing these patterns. Like it's not the addiction. Like the addiction is part of the pattern, but it's not just the pattern.
It's everything
it's
that
so
comes
much
from
more.
it. That's
like
right.
my addiction becomes something else. Like I'm addicted to fucking shoes. Like I have so many shoes, like, and I won't give them to you, and I'm not giving them away. They're for like a rainy day. Like, what if I wear that? Like, I become addicted to anything. So I just have an addictive personality where I can be addicted to money. Like I like work. I work a lot. Like I'm dead ass tired, but I got 20-year-olds that are like, oh my God, like I worked 20 hours this week. I'm like, I worked 45 here and I worked 35 over there. And they're like, how do you do it? And I'm like, I got bills to pay. But I want to take I just got back from Hawaii.
That's
like
right.
that same family that hung up on me and told me that I was never allowed to come home or that like, you're not allowed to see my kids. They asked me to go on a trip with them. Like, to be invited to a family trip like that, like, and be able to pay my own way, like to not go there expecting you to pay for me because like that's what you like. I've always showed up broke, like always showed up broke. So to have them come to me and be like, this is like, you're 40, she's 50, like, we're going to do this together. And I woke up the other day like, oh my, I am so grateful. Like, if you ever told me that the homeless, crackhead, junkie, that's what I called myself back then. Like, that's what I was going to die. Like, I believed that I was going to die of the disease of addiction. And I was okay with that. But like today, like sitting in the most beautiful place on earth without my kids. So like today I realized that like sometimes you need a break. You need a break from like everything, and it's okay. But I need to make sure that Stephanie's okay.
That's right.
Like, if Stephanie's not okay, neither is her daughter. If Stephanie's not okay, my car's not getting paid. Like, I know that I have to check myself, like, to be able to breathe. And I was really uncomfortable with going on a trip without my daughter. Like, I felt guilty. Inside, I was like, this is not right. And my sister looked at me, she's like, yes, it is. Like, it's okay. And I realized that when I was there. You know, I'm like, she's like, listen, go have a good time. Stop calling me. And but inside, my guilt was taking over. And I'm like, but I sat there as she's looking at me like, I'm good, Mom. Like, bye. I'm like, you don't want to talk to me? You don't miss me? She's like, have a good time. What are you calling me for?
So, speaking of talking to your daughter, how have you or will you speak to her about addiction? Or what do you think is the best way to educate and inform kids about addiction?
So my daughter's seen it with both me and her dad. So she's seen both of our lives, you know, fall apart. She didn't understand why she had to stay with her TT, but she thought she was on vacation. I don't even think she remembers that now. But back then, she thought she was on vacation, you know, and it would have been a really super long vacation if neither one of us got our lives together. Right. So, you know, at 9 months old, he started using in her life. So he's been in and out. And now today, like, he's got 4 years clean. He just bought a house and has had multiple jobs in the state of Connecticut. So we both work for the state of Connecticut. Wow. So like, we both want to give her and show her that like life could be like that, or like life could be like this. And like, we've both been honest about like who we are. She knows who we are. She knows, she celebrates anniversaries as they come up. Like, she comes downstairs and she like 5 years clean or like whatever, you know, like she shouts it out because she knows she doesn't really understand. Most of my mom friends that I have that are kids like hang out together, they're moms that I gravitated to in the program. And now our kids have gone to like multiple birthday parties together. So she knows that like there's other kids in there, like, you know, and we both, I think, have looked at it like, oh my God, like we both are addicted. And like, I look at it like my mom and dad were addicted and now look what happened to me. But like, we could break that cycle too.
That's right.
Just being honest with her, letting her be honest with us. Like, I want you to be able to come home, and if you smoked weed last night, I want you to tell me. Like, I don't want you to be scared to talk to me about it. I want you to be able to like, and she does. She like tells me things that like she probably doesn't tell her dad because like I'm her mom. You know what I mean? Like, little girls talk to their moms, you know? And like, there's some things that she just isn't comfortable talking to dad about. And like, that's okay. And there's some things she tells dad that she doesn't talk to me about. Mm-hmm. But she's honest with both of us. And like, that's an important thing, is that me and her dad, we lay down together, but like, we weren't in a relationship. You know, I had a kid at 90 days clean. I didn't even realize that I didn't even like you. Like, I didn't even know. Like, once I got to know who you are, like, I realized that we don't work. Like, we are not okay. We have not tried to pretend that like we're a mom and dad and like we grew up in this great. So she's never had like a mom and dad that live together, you know? But she knows that mom and dad try to work to like build it took a long time because we did not like each other. We hated each other. We fought with each other in front of her. Like, she always said that to me, like, I don't know why daddy doesn't like you, you know? And I don't want her to think that. Like, so we've come to a place where we've tried to be mom and dad for her. You know, it took a lot of fighting to get to a place where now today we can show up on a Zoom meeting for our daughter at school and be okay.
Well, it's that open line of communication. And I love that you mentioned, hey, I just want to be honest with her. And I think that is right there through decades of absolutely nonsensical talk about drugs and the role they play in society. We as a society, I think, have a very warped view of the role that they can play and the role that they ought to play. Meaning that since man was on earth, people used psychoactive substances to escape, right? And they used it as a supplement, as similar to how someone would if they worked out or if they watched a movie or if they played a video game, right? It's about escaping. And when drugs are used in that supplemental role, kind of like, hey, if I'm going to work out, maybe I take some sort of creatine or some sort of supplement, right? Well, if I take that creatine and I don't work out, it's going to have an adverse effect, right? Whereas if I use it in that supplemental role, it can help and it can increase the quality of people's lives. However, for 10% of the population, they can't use it in a safe way because for a variety of reasons, right, they can't have a healthy relationship with that substance. And I think being able to have that honest conversation and talk to people, well, what makes you more susceptible to becoming addicted? Well, if I have history of it in my family, what does that mean? Well, it increases my likelihood. If I start using drugs at a young age, increases my likelihood. If I have a lot of adverse experiences as a child, drastically increases my likelihood, right? Depending on how many adverse experiences one has, they can be up to 80% more likely to develop addiction than an individual who hasn't. That is almost guaranteeing that you're going to have a problem, right? Yeah. That is powerful. But to just say, don't do drugs, they don't work, that's bullshit because they do work, right?
I realized, though, that if I didn't get into the core of the trauma.
That's right.
You have to, get in inside, there's something going on that makes you want to do that.
Right.
And it's not a normal human reaction to go get high every time something goes wrong in your life. Or things are going great. Things will be so good.
Right.
And let me go fuck this up today. Today I'm going to fuck my life up.
What is a normal human reaction is survival, right? And at the core, whether we know it or not, from the minute we wake up to the minute we go to sleep, all we care about is staying alive, right? That is at the base of it. And having these terrible traumatic experiences is, again, the opposite of feeling safe, secure, and surviving. So when I get high and I introduce something that's instantly gratifying, all of a sudden that lines up with survival a hell of a lot more than having a stepfather come in and do unspeakable things to us, right? Or witnessing all the horrendous things that you experience. So it is, I think, it makes sense that, hey, I'm going to try to escape at all costs because anything I'm escaping to is better than what I'm experiencing now. And unfortunately, eventually it stops working, right? And then the life that we have now with the instant gratification becomes a hell of a lot more painful than what our reality could be.
I used to fight against taking medication, right? So I thought, I'm not doing that. I was like a guinea pig for medication. They were like, oh, try this one, try this one, try this. I literally took in so many different pills, and they all had, whether you're gaining weight or you're sleeping all day or you're a zombie, I didn't like that feeling. I don't want to be feeling like that. You have to find what works for you, though. I met an addictions therapist, right? So she got the human chemical in the brain. So when you're using drugs, it might look like you're bipolar because you're coming off a crack run, and then they all wear off and you're super medicated, and you're I don't like to feel like that. I don't want to feel like that anymore. The same way with I was on methadone or Suboxone, and I'm not knocking that. It has worked wonder. I have some friends today that are still alive because those maintenance things kept my friend alive, and it's a beautiful thing if you use it to what it's designed for. But and I've seen things it didn't work for me. I just smoked more crack. So I learned that I needed to be okay with taking medication and giving it a chance to work in my body. And today, I'm taking the same. If I didn't take medication, I'm not going to sit here and be able to have a conversation with you. You'd be like, oh my, get this girl out of here. The same with my family. They used to be what is wrong with this girl?
But it's not just that you take medication, right? It's that you take medication and then you take action.
Right.
Right? Because if you just took the pill and didn't do all of these esteemable things that you do in your life, I guarantee you it would have no effect.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But I also had to on top of taking medication, be able to do some therapy.
Right. That's the action.
It's so much so much pain and so much hurt and so much anger, and like always direct. Like I was so angry at my dad or my mom, and I blamed them for so long. Like, and today I'm like, you did it. You showed up. You have to play the part. Like, I played a part in all of it. Like, I showed up for that shit. And like, whether it was the man that abused me, like I showed up for it and I allowed it. So like that's gonna keep continuing if I keep showing up in that same pattern.
Personal
so
responsibility.
Like, today, like I want to build a life that I don't have to run from anymore. Like I don't want to run.
And I would say you are building.
Oh my God! Like I find such solitude in just being home alone. Like I was never allowed. Like I couldn't be alone. I had to be in the meetings. Like that's how I gravitated to all these people because I didn't want to be alone. I didn't want to be alone. And I realized that after my last relapse, like I had to learn how to be okay with being me, like sitting alone. So today, like whether I go to my 2 jobs, I want to be alone. And like when my daughter's with her dad, I appreciate the time. As much as I appreciate being with her, because like I miss her when she's gone. But like today we have a shared custody agreement, and like that's a beautiful thing. Like we're both clean to the point where we can show up for our daughter and like be okay. You know, he appreciates his time alone, and so do I. Like, you know, it's just being able to be a mom and dad. And I think that's an important thing for her too, is that have a dad that she can like trust. Like I want her to have that relationship with him. And for so long I try to fight that. Like I try to like bring the baby, you know, trying to force him into it. And it just made him resist it more. And like until he was ready too, you know what I mean? Like we both have to be ready.
And that's the key, right? And again, probably one of the best things that self-help programs taught me is it's all about attraction, not promotion.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I can try to force you, it just doesn't work. How do I get someone to do something? Attraction, right?
Yeah.
When they actually want something, then they're willing to again, we can't do what we can't see. And unless I'm aiming for something, it's very unlikely that I'm going to see the road to accomplish it. Once I have something in my scope, now I can move forward, right? Now I begin to see things that I was unable to see before. Unfortunately, we got to wrap up, which I absolutely am bummed about because I actually didn't even get to all my questions.
No?
I really...
He's on fire.
Well, it's just such a topic that I think is so... although we talk about addiction regularly, I don't always think we do a great job talking about it.
Right,
to hear your story today was so incredibly powerful, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. We like to ask all our guests one final question. If you were to, and you do it every day, but if you were to come across someone who was really stuck in life and had just kind of fallen down and didn't know that there was a way to get up or another way to live, if you could give them one piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't give up. No matter how many times you fall down, like you always got tomorrow. It's okay. Like I love to be able to look at someone and be like, if you fall down tomorrow, call me. It's okay. Like it's okay. When somebody finally told me that and I didn't feel like such a failure, it was a relief. So like to be able to look at someone and be like, doesn't matter. Dust it off, get back up, and let's try again.
Normalizing suffering, which is so important because life is all about suffering, right? It's all about taking our suffering, putting it, I look at it as, hey, to move forward, we have to create chaos in our life in some way because doing something new, doing something different is so scary and it's chaotic. And how do we take that chaos and create order out of it? And then go and find more chaos to create and make order out of. So being able to set the stage for people and say, hey, it's okay. You're a human. It's okay. We're going to get through this together. That is so powerful.
Like I said, it like my life, if you told me today where my life would be, to be able to sit on the other side of a state desk, like to be on the other side. Like I sat in front of a state worker for a long time talking about benefits or whatever. Yeah. To be able to be on the other side of it, I still sit at my desk sometimes and pinch myself because like I'm like, how'd I get here?
And that's about as beautiful as it gets. Well, I can't think...
Before you wrap up, Benny, I do want to, I want to give you your flowers because you gave my flowers in the beginning of this. And I've always felt the same way about you in the annex. You know what I'm saying? You always got that smile on, and you always was working hard as hell. Like, you always showed up every day. And I didn't even know your story. You know what I'm saying? So to hear it today and to then see how you showed up back then, was it 4 years ago? Like 3-4 years ago now? To see how you showed up then, and the main thing with working at that company, right, is that when you work around certain people, eventually you see how they interact. The people will show you how they work. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Some people do it for a paycheck and others do it because they passionate. Like, my passion in life right now is, like, just to be able to help somebody else out. Like, if you don't have that, then, like, they see it, though.
Yes.
You know how many people I've housed homeless? Like, more people showed up because, like, I still gave it. Like, I used to tell them, this is, like, my analogy in life, right? I'm like, you're, like, the quarterback, right? I'm on your team. Like, if you don't throw the ball, like, we're going to lose. Like, we're going to lose like, I'm here to play the game the way you want to play it. Like, that's the most important part, is that you're the most important person.
Yeah.
I'm just here to help.
Yeah.
Like, I don't ever want you to think that you're, like, I always try to make sure that, and that's what the nice part about being a recovery support specialist, be like, yo, where's that dude at? Like, where's the person we're talking about? Where's he at in this? Like, because this is your plan. This is your plan. But if it's not his plan, it's not going to work. And that happened to me for so long. Like, it was everybody else's plan but mine. But today it's like my plan.
That's right, and it's working.
And if you want to be on my team, like, you got to play my game.
That's right.
Like,
That's it.
And it's working. So on that note,
it was so nice to meet you guys.
I can't
could
thank
talk
you
for
enough.
hours
I
about
can't.
it.
I can
We're
too.
gonna bring you back. We're gonna bring you back.
I could literally just keep going.
Have another conversation at some point. But for today, thank you so much for coming, especially after taking a trip and being very, very tired with work. So we can't thank you enough, and thank everybody for tuning in.
Falling Up Podcast.